What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall, and you guys can see we got three very special guests on this podcast. We're going to be introducing you guys to some basketball podcasters that we've been checking out over the past month. And what's really exciting about this episode, Kendall, is we're not just finding podcasters here in the States or here in, we're both from New York City, the Philadelphia area. But we're going not just beyond this country, but across the pond to England. To find some guys to talk hoops with us. We've been doing a lot of content recently that's been focused a lot on heroes. If you're on our YouTube channel or if you've been listening to our podcast, Sports Talk's been a lot of football because of the playoffs. But this is going to be an all-ball pod. And we got the best guys to talk ball with us this week. So we got the Met the Criteria podcast. And I want to introduce you guys to everybody. So first I'll start with Jared. Jared, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
No, appreciate you making the time, having us on, guys. We're looking forward to this. It's going to be fun. I've been keeping up with your guys' work as well. We love what you do. So, yeah, thanks for inviting us on.
That's what's up. We got Vincent over here as well. We were talking about hair. Right before we recorded this pod, I told him how my hair is all crazy. He's got the do-rag. I wish I had low enough hair so I could put it in the do-rag, but this is all I got. But appreciate you coming on, man.
No, I appreciate you having us. You and your brothers do some great work, so it's a privilege to be joining you guys today.
That's what's up. And Theo also joins us on the pod. Theo, thanks so much for coming on, dude.
Honestly, it's a pleasure. This is our first guest pod, but it's also obviously our first international pod. So it's just good to cross the waters and speak to some genuine local hoops fans who haven't just got into the game because they played 2K. We've actually been to the arenas and got stuck in. So thanks very much for having us on.
That's what's up. And I actually was going to start with that. What is, me, obviously I'm wearing Knicks gear. I'm a Knicks fan. I grew up in New York City, in Queens. My dad's a Knicks fan. So that's where my Knicks fandom came. Kendall, as you see, Celtic fan. His fandom kind of started by just one, his favorite color was green. And two, his favorite player growing up was Paul Pierce. So that's what... Yeah, exactly. So that was our introductions to the game, through whether it be our parents or the regional aspect, or for Kendall, jumping to certain athletes. For you guys being across the pond, what was your introduction to the NBA, and how did you guys become such big fans?
I'll jump in first. My cousin has been a massive basketball fan all his life. Used to play for a local team. I was never that big of a fan when I was younger. I was always sort of into football, like most people here in the UK. But it's coming up about 5 years ago, isn't it, Theo? We went on a holiday to New York, and we wanted to go and just get the full New York City experience, go to all the major sports that we could. So we went to a basketball game, and I just loved it. I was absolutely hooked. The highlight plays, the atmosphere. Just everything about it I loved, and from then onwards really just got more and more into it each season, and then now here we are 6 months into doing a podcast covering it every week. So yeah, it's been a journey, but yeah, that was really our introduction for me, especially being there live at a New York City game.
When Jared says football, by the way, he means soccer.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. True.
Yeah, and thank you for any UK fans who may be checking out this pod also, who understood what he was saying, and thank you for Vincent for clearing it up for our American viewers. What about you, Vincent?
So I got into it potentially, I think about 2.5 years ago. I've always known basketball, but never really followed it. But about 2.5 years ago, I just started watching this guy called The Beard. All of a sudden, there's this guy who just got a beard and he's just balling constantly. And I was like, what team does he support? What team does he play for? Then I found out it was the Houston Rockets, and I never really looked back. I just started trying to watch. I got myself NBA League Pass, started watching as much games as possible. Then after watching just the Rockets, I just started watching some classic games, like watching Kobe in his finest, watching some classic games of what's it called? Finals. 2017 finals, 2015 finals. It's like watching all games, really, kind of appreciating greatness. So it was just literally that's how I got into it, and I've got to a point now where I just love basketball. It's probably my second favorite sport right now We'll always have a passion for soccer first, because in England, obviously, soccer is a massive thing for us over here. I'm saying soccer like I'm American. I should stop saying that. It's soccer, but yeah, basically, we got into that, and that's how I've got into it, really.
I was the whole time you were talking then, Vincent. As soon as you said the beard, I was like, "Oh, Elijah got you into basketball. That's very cool. That's
well
cool
done.
Story. And now you're on a pod together." And I just twigged you meant the other beard.
Kendall's there thinking, "Hey, wait a minute, what's going on over here? I've got something here."
There you go.
What about you, Jared? I'm sorry, Theo. I mean.
Yeah, so similar-ish to Jared, really. Like, I liked basketball as a kid. Space Jam was always my favourite film. I had a hoop in my back garden. As I sort of got a little bit older, soccer took over. Football, such a thing here in the UK. And the NBA is so sort of like marginalised. It's almost non-existent, particularly sort of like 20 years ago. So eventually, I got a cheap copy of NBA 2K. It was on sale. Got into that a little bit, enjoyed playing that, and then Jared mentioned we went on holiday to New York. We stayed in Brooklyn. We went on like an arena tour of Madison Square Garden. It's an iconic stadium. We wanted to get tickets to go and see the Knicks. Obviously, being slightly I'm speaking to a Knicks fan now, so I need to be careful what I say.
Yeah.
Being unaware of the Knicks' recent, I won't use the word misery, but the standard of basketball that the team was playing sort of around 2015-16, not his finest. We just wanted to go for the atmosphere and get involved and get stuck in. Anyway, Knicks tickets were like $80, and we were like, I don't really want to pay that. It was $20 to go and see the Brooklyn Nets play the day after. So it was a bit of a no-brainer for us, really. So we went to Barclays Centre. Jared said we loved it. We had a great time. I sort of like carried that on. I've been a Nets fan ever since. So the game we went to, it was the last game of the season against the Toronto Raptors. I think we just won. It was a 20-win season for the Nets, and the season after we won 21. So being used to following not a very good football team here in England, I was used to following not good sports teams. So it was just a natural progression, really, that I picked the Nets when they were performing really as badly as they were, and it's paying off for me now. At least it's paying off.
I know for a lot of New Yorkers who are familiar with Knicks tickets, I think you had a bargain at $80. I'm curious where you found those $80 tickets, because Knicks tickets, even in the most bleacher, nosebleed seats, sometimes can go for 100, 150. So you even got, even despite that you passed on those tickets, you actually had a pretty decent deal, it seems like. But
if I'd known that, I probably would have done it.
But you wouldn't be a Nets fan.
Things could have been exactly. So
yeah, and you wouldn't be enjoying the new big three that they have over there. You'd be lamenting over the development of Emmanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin, which is what we are over here doing with the Knicks.
Career high, wasn't it, last night? 31 points.
Yes,
he did.
That. Yeah, Emmanuel Quickley certainly playing good, and we'll talk a lot about some of these rookies a little bit later in the pod, and we'll talk a little bit more about you guys' upbringing and you guys' podcast as well. Want to make sure you guys make sure you follow these guys. They're on Twitter, Bet the Criteria, right? I believe that's the Twitter account. And then of course make sure you make sure you find the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I saw you guys on Anchor FM. You guys are pretty much everywhere, it seemed like.
Everywhere, man.
We're everywhere. We're everywhere.
You can't get away from us.
No.
New Generation Podcast Network.
Yeah, now they're on a whole different podcast network. So make sure you guys check out their podcast. They really do good stuff, and I think you'll get a good preview of some of the stuff that they like to do on their pod, on this pod.
I thought it was interesting that both you guys, Theo and Vincent, are Rockets and Nets fans, and I'm sure that's been a topic of conversation for you guys on your own podcast.
Believe me, when I say to you, Kendall, how it's been a difficult past couple of months dealing with Theo, the grief that I've been getting and also giving, it's a love-hate relationship right now between me and Theo. So it's quite difficult at the moment.
It's tough as well, because we have like the pod itself. We cover the whole league, but it's very tempting for us, being fans of teams that were for the last couple of weeks have been like at the forefront of the headlines. It's difficult not for me. I mean, I always get slated off these guys for being biased and always talking about the Nets. I mean, I do my best to be.
Because you are.
I think you'll find I'm probably the least biased of all three of us, Vincent. You know that to be true. But yeah, it's really difficult not to just get suckered into just talking about two teams and trying to be a little bit more balanced and make sure we take the whole league into consideration. For me, especially when things are going as well, potentially, as they could do for the Nets coming up, definitely.
So we're now reaching about a week and a half since that deal. What have you guys seen from both the Nets and Rockets perspective? Obviously, Victor Oladipo's had a couple of big games early in his time in Houston, and the Nets have been up and down. Obviously, they had that sweep against Cleveland where they lost both games, but they also had a nice performance against Miami. What have you guys seen from both sides of that Rockets Nets trade?
Me personally, I think with the James Harden situation, I was kind of content with him leaving. It got to a point where first couple of early weeks when he wanted to leave, I was all like, no, please, you can't do this to me. You're the guy that made me love this team. But then it became to a point where if someone wants to leave a franchise team, at the end of the day, you can't be forcing someone to want to stay. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to be fully there. And to turn down, what was it they turned down? 100 mil? What was it? How much did they turn down?
Yes.
100 mil.
It
Truly, if someone's willing to turn down a 105 mil extension, that really shows you that they don't care about the money. They want out. So to have that in the locker room is not really a nice thing to have. So it got to a point where you kind of realize, look, he's got to go. He has to move on. So it got to a point where I was content about that. But what was disappointing for me to see is what we got back. Now, I know a lot of people might look and go, look, you guys got so much picks. There's a number of amount of picks. But for me personally, it kind of made us now a rebuild team. Like, we are now potentially a team that could be next couple of years maybe struggling to even get to the playoffs. Like this year, my honest opinion, my heart says we'll make it, but in my head, I know we won't make the playoffs. So it's about me kind of being content, like realizing, look, for the next couple of years, it's going to be a rebuild. So I know.
Couple of years.
You know what I mean? It's going to be a period like that. It might be for a while. So I know what you're thinking, Kendall. Like you got Vic who's playing a couple of decent games. You got
Boogie, who's had a resurgent season.
Yeah, you got Boogie who came back. He was doing some decent game. He had a decent game. I think he dropped 28 points.
Christian Wood.
I know you may be seeing that, but I still think it might not be there fully to get us to the playoffs. Please, I want to be proven wrong, but I feel like there's more teams stronger than us out that right now in the West at the moment. So it's just about kind of seeing, is this going to be a rebuild or? Because to lose James Harden is a massive loss. But at the moment, disappointed with the front office, in all honesty, me personally.
Would you have preferred that they go harder after Ben Simmons?
Yes. Like that was one pick. If you ask these two, I was adamant about it. Jared was like saying to me, mate, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Yes, it was going to be a very, very difficult trade. But if you're getting rid of James Harden, like, we want something big in return. We want something. Listen, Theo, I don't need your little laughs right now, Theo. Stop acting all funny. But I think, end of the day, we wanted something big. So I feel like our front office should have pushed it. But Jared said it continuously to me, like, it's not going to happen. And it's like, yes, it's not going to happen because they don't want to get rid of Ben Simmons. But that's what I would have wanted. I would have loved for the Rockets to have got Ben Simmons. It was the only replacement that would have kept me happy. Would have kept, I think, the entire franchise happy and the fans happy.
Now, on the Nets side, how as a Nets fan have you felt, Theo, on the early returns of the big three, Kyrie, Durant, and Harden, and the reports coming out today that the Nets might be interested in Kevin Love? What do you think about that as well?
So I've sort of done like a full 360 on James Harden. Obviously, when the Nets, like a 720 really. Like when the Nets were first rumored to be interested in swinging for the fences and getting Harden, I was dead excited. I loved it, fully on board. Thinking, imagine that would be unstoppable. Probably two potential top 5 scorers in the league. Kyrie Irving, who fringe top 10 in the league himself. So I thought, yeah, it'd be fantastic. And then the season sort of started, and we had those great results early on against the Golden State and the Celtics. I thought, oh, no, we've got all this depth. We've got Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen, these superb players coming off the bench. So I was like, we don't need James Harden. We can win it without him. And then the season sort of took a little bit of a turn, and we were struggling for form and consistency. And then the Harden sort of thing re-emerged a little bit. And then I was torn. I didn't really know what I wanted. We had all this depth, but at the same time, the opportunity's there to pick up a top 5, top 6 player in the league. You've got to do it, haven't you? Like, you've got to go for it. So then when the deal happened, I was sort of like a little bit numb. Obviously, Nets fans, we love both those guys. Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert were huge figures in the Nets process. They were really instrumental to us getting in a position where we could land Kyrie and KD in the first place. And to see those guys go was a little bit bittersweet. But having James Harden on the Nets now, I think I'm fully excited. Once he was in and he was doing his first press conferences, and Kyrie Irving came back from his absence with the team, and he's reportedly fully bought in and happy to be back and practicing again and stuff. That concern's out of the way. I think I'm fully invested, fully on board with the big three.
EJ Kendall. So I was going to say real quickly, I think he proper shortened that story, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Because I'm telling you, Jared can testify for this as well. This is a guy who would text the WhatsApp group chat. We're in a little WhatsApp group chat with a couple of us, our friends. He'd be like, it's happening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we'll be waking up in the morning with James Harden as a Nets fan. This was a couple of weeks ago. And all of a sudden, nah, I don't want James Harden. I don't want James Harden. I don't want James Harden. Then, I can't wait for James Harden. I can't wait for James Harden. This guy was complete bipolar about it.
Honestly, I just think it's going to be fascinating. If anyone tuning in, new generation media, who goes back and listens to some of our pods, you'll be able to hear Theo's journey throughout this whole thing. Every time we talked about the Harden trade, he had a different opinion on it. So yeah, Vinny's absolutely right. That was a shortened story.
So I know the plight, Theo, because as a Celtics fan, you know, when I was introduced to the Celtics, they were not a good team, and there was a part of me that when we made the trade for Ray Allen and the trade for Kevin Garnett at the time, that was like, I kind of want the young guys to build it. How do you feel about moving on from LeVert, moving on from Allen? Obviously, D'Angelo Russell's not there anymore. And, you know, there's even been talk about maybe they'll move on from Dinwiddie. Do you feel a little weird about now rooting for a team that has 3 superstars?
Yeah, I think because obviously I joined the franchise at probably the lowest period in the last sort of decade. Since the move to Brooklyn, probably the worst couple of seasons consecutively. I picked the worst time to join, but then seeing players like D'Angelo Russell and Karis LeVert sort of emerging, and that whole bench mob that they had going on with my personal favourite all-time player, Jared Dudley, and like even Theo Pinson, having so much energy on the bench, and you see that the gifs of it now, of them dancing and celebrating after the good plays and stuff. And that was really what endeared this team to me, like, because it was so much fun. That season of the 18-19 season was probably one of the most enjoyable sports years I've had in following a sports team probably ever, because it was just so much fun. So to completely sort of move away from that culture that they'd built of that sort of Brooklyn grit and playing hard, and the guys being such a cohesive team and a unit on the bench, to not necessarily disregard that, but to move more towards the superstar-driven team that we've now become. It's a little bit not necessarily disappointing. I wouldn't say disappointing, but it does definitely take adjusting to get used to the idea of it being a whole different culture there now. But ultimately, if it results in us being Eastern Conference champions or getting a championship ring out of it, it's a totally different story. Obviously, it's worthwhile.
And you get over it.
Exactly.
You get over it pretty quickly.
Exactly. And I'm happy to give up the future. I mean, we gave up so much to get Harden with regards to future picks. And if we win a ring or two with Harden and KD and Kyrie, and then spend the next 6 years winning 20 games a season, was it worth it? Probably, yeah.
Look, as someone who's endured 50 and 60 lost seasons, seems like forever. with zero payoff. Trust me, I'm pretty sure you'll be good with it. One last thing before I go to Jared, I want to ask you one last thing, Theo. I'm sure you've seen it on social media with the obvious saltiness between Knicks fans and Nets fans. I feel like for me as a Knicks fan, it feels more personal and visceral because I live in New York City, and of course I live in the United States. How has that been for you as a new fan, seeing kind of this like ongoing like back and forth on social media with like Knicks fans keep trying to minimize the Nets' relevancy in the city?
While Nets joins in.
Well, Nets fans.
To answer the question, he joins in. He's one of them. He joins in.
Because Nets fans, they love to like talk about how it's the Knicks who are actually irrelevant, and that the Nets are taking over the city. Like, what is that perspective coming from the UK?
So, in football culture, in soccer culture over here, rivalry is like a big thing, particularly a local rivalry. So between the fact that New York and Brooklyn are on each other's doorstep, the same city. If it was a UK football rivalry, it'd probably be one of the best ones in the league. So coming from that sort of culture, transferring that to basketball, I fully do get involved in the pelters between the Nets and the Knicks. I do love it. And obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean as much to me. I'm not as invested as you are. Like you say, you live in New York. You have to. You'll have first-hand experience of how few people there are walking around in Nets gear, apparently, if you listen to what Nick's Twitter has to say. But yeah, no, I'm fully getting involved, and I do love it because I just think it adds that edge to it. Particularly, this season has probably been more competitive, with the Knicks being more competitive than anybody expected them to be. Really, that first game the other week, which wasn't quite as close as everybody expected to be, but going into that game, it was really exciting because the Knicks were on the up, and the Nets were having a bit of a torrid time of it. Just after the Harden trade was announced and they were without so many key pieces, we thought, this could be a really, really competitive game. And I was getting into my mind, I'm going to have all these Knicks fans coming for me after we lose to the Knicks, after me giving it Billy Big on the podcast for the last however long. Obviously, it didn't quite go that way, but yeah, no, I'm fully involved in the rivalry and I'm here for all of the smoke.
Yeah, let me tell you something what he does as well, EJ. Let me tell you real quickly. He was in a contest a couple of weeks ago organised by NBA UK fans. Mm-hmm. They're a great follow, by the way. Basically, when he was doing his questions, to pass, they wouldn't say pass. They would say New York Knicks. That's what he would say. He would say Knicks. That's the level of disrespect this guy gives to the New York Knicks. He wouldn't say pass. He would say Knicks. As he's to continue on for the next one. So just let you know, this guy is a hater. He's a New York.
I'm petty.
Yeah. Well, look. I mean, as a New Yorker, I could say that. I mean, the wanting all the smoke and the trash talk. I mean, that's what is being a New York fan. So I can't even really be that mad about it because it almost feel weird if you were like, oh no, it's okay. Like, and that Knicks are fine. Like I think that it's great that like you've been able to embrace that. Rivalry, on even from over in the UK. And I will say one last thing about that game between the Knicks and the Nets is you guys had the ultimate silver bullet, which is Kevin Durant. Despite all the problems the Nets may have been having on that day, in that week with Kyrie and not having everybody there because you just traded for Harden. You had Kevin Durant playing the way he played. It's that's kind of ends up being your kind of end all be all in that kind of game. But I do want to get Jared in here for a second because I do want to shift focus to the team. One of the teams that the Nets are definitely considered to be kind of in contention with for that top spot in the East once this is all said and done. That's the Milwaukee Bucks, and they had a very high profile game with the Bucks before Kyrie came back, where they kind of implored a very, I don't want to say a unique defense anymore because we're starting to see teams kind of play this style against Giannis where they're just backing him off, walling off, and just saying we're daring you, 15 feet plus, full space, you got to make these shots. And we've seen him kind of be hit or miss. They lost a close game to the Nets, obviously. They lost a close game to the Lakers. And I think there are now questions circling about Giannis's ability to close. And that's going to be obviously vital when it comes to playing in the postseason. And we've seen him struggle in the last two times he's been there against the Heat and against the Raptors. Do you trust in Giannis and the Bucks' ability to close against good teams in the playoffs? Because that seems to be really their only thing stopping them from getting to a title.
In short, no. Obviously, you want a little bit more than that. It was a big week for the Bucks. You never want to read too much into regular season games. It all matters in the playoffs, as we say. But it's just interesting to see how many of the sort of stellar teams in the league are sort of copying the what the Heat did in the playoffs last year, building that wall, as you say, daring Giannis to not have just hit layups, just hit dunks, just hit floaters in and around the paint. I think the limitations that he's got in his game could be ultimately what costs them. And a lot of pressure really is being put on Chris Middleton in the end of game situations. Giannis sort of plays the first sort of 45 minutes as the main guy. And then in the last 5 minutes of the game or so, the ball's in Chris Middleton's hands and Giannis barely sees it. So I think ultimately we could very easily see a similar situation in the playoffs for the Bucks. Because the Nets played him very, very well the other day. And if your MVP All-Star caliber player isn't performing at his highest level, it's going to be difficult to beat anyone in the playoffs.
And one of the things that if you listen to our podcast, and I've been on this campaign for 2 years, and Kendall knows exactly where I'm going here, is I feel like, is there some concern with their offensive system? I think there is, considering, the way Budenholzer coaches, and it's very spaced, and it's really a lot of it is predicated on Giannis' ability to kind of draw on the defense and then kick out to guys that are going to be able to hit shots. And what I've long called for is for the Bucks to bring in a floor general. To me, for 2 years in a row, I was begging them to trade for Chris Paul, because to me, even though they have Drew Holiday this year and he's a great player, they still lack, to me, the floor general who can get other guys easy shots when the game is nip and tuck, when the game is super tight. It was painfully obvious when they had Eric Bledsoe and George Hill running the point, and really it became Giannis running the point in those situations. But when you see these good teams play, whether the Lakers being the team that comes to mind, I don't know how many times you see LeBron have the ability to not only get himself an easy shot, but get AD an easy shot, whether it be a layup or a dunk or a wide open three in these close games. The Bucks have never really seemed to be invested in getting that kind of player. I don't know if any of you guys want to jump in. Do you see that the same way? Do you feel like they're missing that kind of floor general, or do you think it is more perhaps an issue with Giannis or the coaching?
I personally think with the Bucks, they don't really. I said it last year, on the playoffs, but they don't really have a plan B. They just only rely on Giannis, and they think that will win them the game. They believe we've got such an offensive powerhouse, someone who's so incredibly dominant. We don't need anything else. And a lot of teams are now catching on in how to defend against Giannis. And I think that's something they really do. You are right. They do need someone like a general. Drew Holiday is in that. Drew Holiday is an incredible defender. He's probably the best defensive point guard in the league. So in that regard, and we thought maybe that could help Giannis become more of a better defender. But he doesn't need to be a better defender. He's already a great defender. But they don't have that floor general. They don't, and it is clearly obvious. And a lot of teams are now catching on with the Bucks. But in my opinion, they don't have a plan B. They just rely on Giannis, and they think, look, Giannis, go out, do what you do, dunk on every single person, and just see if that will work. Because that is literally it. Giannis just dunks. Obviously, some people might say, look, Giannis can't take a three. He's improving on it. Look, I keep getting slated on about it. I keep saying Giannis can shoot a three. People are like, he can't shoot a three. He can shoot a three. It might just take not enough of it. But yeah, they just have a plan A and they don't have a plan B, and they really need to work at that, because people are going to catch on. And they might not get that top space this year. They might not get that top seed we all think they normally get in the East. It could potentially be the 76ers or the Nets. So we'll see what happens with them. They could get that.
Kendall putting up the Boston Celtics hat. I think that's wishful thinking over there.
You got to remember.
Tatum's back tonight as well. Tatum's back.
Tatum, you got to remember the problem, okay?
And just for any of our new generation listeners who aren't familiar with Vincent, the Boston Celtics are actually his second team. So as far as his
I was concerned because you said Drew Holiday was the best guard defender, and I'm thinking of at point guard. I'm like, what about Marcus Smart? So I thought he had a grudge.
I'm sorry. Marcus Smart is a very good defender. You can't deny that. He's probably one of the best. But Drew Holiday is no joke. Drew Holiday, for me personally, is the best the best defensive guard in the league, without a doubt. For me personally, I think he's so underrated. And what I normally take opinion of is players. And when players say who's the best guard to defend, who is the best defending guard, every last one of them, majority of them will say Drew Holiday. Majority will say Drew Holiday, all of them. So that, to me, people who play against him, it really shows you who is the best guard. But Marcus Smart's no joke himself. He is the real deal as well.
So one of the things we talk about on this podcast a lot is the NBA draft. And this year we've seen what we thought was going to be a weaker draft, a weaker pool of rookies. There have been a lot of interesting performances from some of these guys. So who have been some of the guys that you guys have been impressed by in this rookie class? I'm not sure how much college basketball you guys are able to watch over in the UK. But, at seeing their, what kind of impressions have you gotten from some of these guys so far in their rookie year?
I think it's been a bit of a funny one. Like you said, there weren't enormous expectations coming into this, on this draft class, really, because arguably one of the weaker drafts of recent years, particularly when you compare it to next year's draft class, which is reported to be very strong. I mean, we don't have much of an insight into college hoops over here. We just sort of read the reports and try and big fat zero from Vincent. We just try and keep up best we can. And maybe you might know the top 5 prospect, maybe top 10 at a push. But I think what's been evident so far this season is how good the rookies have been. Even the players who haven't gone top 3, top 5. While there's not necessarily been a standout star from the draft class, the consistency from sort of 1 through 15, 1 through 20 has been really, really solid, I think. I was expecting big things out of Obi Toppin. I think he was probably one of the most like NBA ready bodies in the draft class. Obviously, for him to struggle as much as he has, sort of like with injury, and he's been sort of eased back in very slowly, doesn't help him sort of sharing the minutes with Julius Randle, and he's going to be playing all 48 of them if Tibbs has got anything to say about it. But Obi Toppin, I'm sure he'll probably have a great year. But Emmanuel Quickly, probably for me, has been the most surprising standout between. I'm not going to. I think I know who Jared's going to say. I'm not going to steal Jazz's, but Quickly for me, he's got to get the praise just because he's been so consistent straight away. He's not really had much of an adjustment period, performing really well. So if the Knicks carry on performing well, he could easily be in contention for Rook of the Year so far, I think.
Jared, what about you?
I'm not going to say who Theo thinks I'm going to say. As a Bulls fan, I think he thinks I'm going to go for Project Patrick Williams.
Project Pat. That's what we call the hero new generation as well.
Yeah. I mean, he's been solid. He doesn't do a lot wrong. But no, I think my sort of standout so far has probably been Tyrese Haliburton. Okay. Yeah, very good. He does me better than I thought. Yeah. Now Tyrese Haliburton, I think he's leading all rookies in fourth quarter scoring. He's had some real impressive clutch performances, not just against the Bulls, where he torched us. He's had a couple of performances through the season where he's just proved himself to be so NBA ready, so ready for the big moment, as it were. Playing in a team that it isn't going too well for Sacramento at the moment. But he was touted as a sort of higher level prospect, ended up sliding down, and it looks like the Kings have managed to pick up someone who they can put alongside De'Aaron Fox and have sort of a backcourt that could be really, really solid for the next couple of years. So yeah, I've been impressed with Haliburton, and obviously we all see every single one of the LaMelo Ball's highlights. He's a fun player to watch. But yeah, I think at the moment I'm leaning towards Haliburton as probably the most impressive rookie I've seen so far.
Yeah, I just looked at my phone and saw a highlight of LaMelo Ball tying his sneakers. So, Vincent, what rookie performances have impressed you?
I think I'm just going to be one of those who's going to be like following the crowd in the sense of LaMelo Ball. Because I don't know if you ever watched these guys called RDC World. They did this skit about LaMelo Ball, about how every single time he just passes to someone, even that person might have a great 3-point shot or even a dunk. It's all focused on LaMelo Ball. Like, what a pass! What a pass from LaMelo Ball! Like, but LaMelo Ball, you can't deny this guy is special. He is really, really talented. I personally think the way the media's going, the way it's all going, it looks like he's got a high chance of winning the Rookie of the Year. Obviously, Tyrese Haliburton is a very good player right now, and he is playing for. He is, as Jared says, NBA ready. But what LaMelo Ball is doing for me personally, I think once the Hornets start actually starting him, because I feel like maybe he needs to get an opportunity to maybe start starting, and I think once he gets that, he might have an opportunity to actually have a good little run in the team, and he could be because he's a great passer of the ball. I think he's better than Lonzo. He's a great passer of the ball, and I feel like I'm like LeVar Ball right now. The praise
talking him up.
I feel like he should be starting, and I think he's got potential to be a great player. But for me, so far, the one that shines for me is LaMelo Ball. I think he is really, really. He's no joke. He is the real deal as well. So he just needs to start starting. I personally think once he starts starting for the Hornets, we could see something special from the guy.
Got to give a bit of love to Peyton Pritchard as well for the C's.
Absolutely, man.
He's performed pretty well. I don't think just further to what Theo was saying earlier, some of the consistency in the top picks. I don't think anyone expected Pritchard to be playing as many minutes. Obviously, the COVID protocols and everything doesn't help, but you must be happy with him, Kendall. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot, certainly with Peyton Pritchard. One of the things that we've noticed over the years, really, with a lot of rookies, is that the older prospects tend to do a little better. So he did 4 years of college at Oregon. And so he's come in. He's just the same age as Jason Tatum, which, is a good thing and a bad thing. But he's certainly NBA ready. But we've seen Emmanuel quickly as an older prospect, Haliburton, an older prospect, and those guys have done well as well.
Deshaun Tate.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Deshaun Tate, certainly another guy, much older, coming out of Ohio State. But yeah, this has been a very good rookie class, a little better than I expected.
And I think the one guy, Kendall, we got to mention as well is Tyrese Maxey with the Sixers.
Yeah, Maxey.
Another guy. I don't know. Again, I know you guys are not as familiar with the college game, but one thing we've talked about on our pod a bunch of times is the Kentucky guys sometimes are the hardest guys to really evaluate because the way their coach John Calipari coaches them is he wants them to figure out an NBA role that he can fit on his team because he thinks that'll help them in the NBA level. And in many ways, what happens is guys end up kind of not showing all they can do. So I think what we've seen from Maxey and quickly is way more ability to play the point, way more craftiness than we're allowed to show. I mean, quickly with Kentucky was a shooting guard. I mean, he was just a guy who came in and he was trying to make threes, and he was very good at it. But there isn't much of a market for 6'2" shooting guards. So a lot of Knicks fans, when he got drafted, there was a lot of concern saying the team needs a point guard badly. We didn't take one in the first pick. We're taking a guy now who, yes, out of high school he was a point guard, but he hasn't played point guard in 2 seasons. But what we've seen, whether it be Devin Booker or whether it be Tyler Hero, is that sometimes these Kentucky kids, they got way more game than they're even allowed to show at UK. But because Calipari's focused on everybody getting all their shine in order to showcase themselves for the NBA, sometimes you have guys come in and look way different. I mean, I remember me and Kendall had like not vicious, but like very intense arguments about Karl-Anthony Towns and Jahlil Okafor. I think we both preferred Okafor, but none of us knew Karl-Anthony Towns could shoot threes the way he did in his rookie year. Like that's something he didn't do at Kentucky because at the time Cal said you need to be able to play in the post consistently. And while I know you can shoot threes, we have other guys on this team that can shoot threes better than you, like Devin Booker, who was not allowed to dribble or play point or show any of his on-ball ISO ability, because they were like, we have other guys that I need to be able to do that with. So I think with Maxey and Quickly, those are 2 guys that, sometimes it's like they went to a great school because of the prestige and they didn't end up getting drafted in the first round. But sometimes you don't end up getting a great look at who they are in those 20, 30 games in college because they're just playing a role that's so different than what they'll do in the NBA.
I think Lou Williams was felt disrespected by there's no market for a 6'2" shooting guard.
I just think, just before we move on, I just think it's interesting that in that conversation about rookies, none of us mentioned the number 1 pick, Anthony Edwards.
Or the number 2.
Or the number 2 pick. I mean, to be fair, Wiseman has been very good, but he's just so raw, isn't he? So young. There's more that needs to be done.
Draymond coaching him up. Yeah.
Feel good clips, them, aren't they? But yeah, Edwards, a bit disappointing, but there we go.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little bit of an adjustment period for Edwards. I think Edwards and Wiseman in some ways are kind of like kindred spirits in that they're both like, the tools are there for them to be great, and I just think a lot of it's gonna be just like seasoning and kind of getting used to the speed and the familiarity of the game. Wiseman, I think, being 7 feet tall, is able to kind of just kind of bull his way through some of the growing pains, where Edwards, he's a guard, so I think it's become a little bit more of a learning curve. I'm not concerned about Edwards, but yeah, I would say definitely a little disappointing. And he went to kind of a weird team, because you come to a team as the number 1 pick, and then you have 2 all-star caliber players on your team. That kind of like
in their
finding your role, in their primes, finding your role in that kind of squad is different. Most number 1 picks come in, they're getting all the shots, and they're going to be top guys on their team, and he's kind of had to take a step back. I do want to ask you guys about, I mentioned Maxey just now. I wanted to mention, 2 teams that have been red hot, and they are teams that I think, these teams I think also have kind of been kindred spirits in the sense that, there wasn't much belief as to how deep they could really go into the postseason coming into this year, even though they've been perennial playoff contenders. That's been the Utah Jazz and the Philadelphia 76ers. They both, too, have been the hottest teams in the NBA. The Sixers are first in the East. The Jazz are second in the West. They're right there with the Lakers and the Clippers, which has been, I think, a surprise for a lot of people. We had that viral, very weird interview with Shaq saying that that Donovan Mitchell wasn't good enough to win, which is kind of weird. But nonetheless, I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on which of these hot stars do you believe in more, transcending to possible postseason success?
For me, it would have to be the 76ers. Don't get me wrong, what the Utah Jazz are doing is brilliant. Like I was saying, we'll talk about this literally in the pod last night. And what the Utah Jazz are doing at the moment is brilliant. They've not lost in such a long time. But I feel like the 76ers, how Joel Embiid is playing right now, it seems like he's stepping up. He's really, truly stepping up. Me and Theo last year, we were kind of slating Joel Embiid. We were like, he's got a bit of an attitude problem. He needs to work on it. He comes across kind of like selfish. But he seems to have taken on that responsibility as the main guy now.
He heard us. He heard our remarks.
He's been listening to our pod. But he's taken on that responsibility now, saying, look, I am the main. I need to step up now. And now, him and Simmons, I think they need to find that common ground with each other, who is the main man in this team. And I think they've realized maybe it's Embiid. Simmons is no joke as well. I keep saying a lot of peers are not a joke, but Simmons is the real deal himself. But it's about kind of saying, Joel Embiid at the moment is realizing, look, I am the main guy. I have to take on that responsibility. So I feel like they could be pushing for that number 1 spot. Post-playoffs, the league, I don't know how far they can get. It's all about how the team gels, how Doc can get them. They've got a good coach right now. I know Jared doesn't view... I don't know if you... Am I right, Jared? You don't view Doc Rivers as a great coach. But okay, maybe I don't know, maybe. But I personally view Doc Rivers as a very good coach. He's going to find a good common ground with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. He's got a good core group of players alongside them. You got your Shake Miltons. You got your Curry, who Theo thinks is a better shooter. No, did you say better shooter than?
Statistically, he is a better scorer than Steph.
He thinks he's a better scorer than his brother Steph. But
statistically,
you got players like Curry. So it's just about, can they find that gel and work about it and see if they can potentially? They could be a trouble in the East. They could potentially have a decent run. But the Jazz, I feel like I'm disrespecting them like a lot of people do. And maybe this is me sleeping on the Jazz like I normally do. That in the sense of you kind of think, oh, it's the Utah Jazz. How far will they get? But that's just showing disrespect, like I'm doing, like I'm being like Shaq right now. I'm showing disrespect to Spider. But that's the whole concept. It's the Utah Jazz, and that's why I feel like maybe they can't go any further. But please, I hope they prove me wrong. I hope they prove everyone wrong. They deserve it. Donovan Mitchell deserves it.
Yeah, we had a bit of a thing, didn't we, last season, coming into the playoffs in the bubble. Vinny and I, Jared a little bit, but not so much. We sort of disrespected the playoff series between the Jazz and the Nuggets, and we just couldn't understand it. Like, why? It just Vinny, why are you shaking your head?
I mean,
sorry.
To be honest, it was more me and
exactly.
you.
I was going to say that was Jared. Jared was the worst of us. He kept saying like this was a pointless one. It was Jared who was saying this. Yeah. I watched the game. I was like,
you didn't
I
watch
was
the
like,
game. I'm not having that.
I don't know, but okay.
Anyway, we were a little bit disrespectful, saying it's not the most. It's probably the least exciting of all the playoff matchups. And in the end, it proved us all wrong, and it was a fantastic series that we missed out on because it got. I think it got to like 5 games in, and I still hadn't seen any of it. And like, it did not interest me at all. And I think the Jazz, underrated. I think in a lot of cases, even now, being in the position that they're in the league, they're still being underrated. They're proving that they can do it with a degree of consistency in the regular season. How that translates into the postseason, that's where it's really going to matter. I think long term, the 76ers have got the leg up on them with regards to who's going to have more success. I rated the 76ers very highly coming into the season. I thought I had them around second, finishing second in the East, actually ahead of the Nets, believe it or not. Because I think the additions that they made in the offseason were really solid. Bringing in Seth Curry, I would say no, he's not my favourite of the Curry brothers, but I do rate him very highly. I'm a big Seth Curry fan. Dwight Howard, obviously a huge addition. Danny Green's a little bit hit and miss, but he's got championship blood. Like, he's of that caliber player, absolutely. So I think they've made really key additions surrounding Embiid and Simmons with players who can shoot the ball, which is what they really needed to do. They're a solid defensive unit. Simmons probably in the conversation for best, not only best guard defender, he can guard 1 through 5 quite comfortably. Embiid is just a monster. So I think they've got the right build, and it seems like Doc's got them clicking. But I think even though I rated them as highly as I did coming into the season, they've still surprised me. So I reckon that they'll probably cause a lot of problems even going into the postseason, the 76ers for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a clean sweep, full house. I'm going to agree with the boys here. I think Philly have got the better sort of chance to sustain what they've started off doing. Philly are a problem for the Nets. I think they're probably the hardest matchup for the Nets in the playoffs, just purely because they have the defenders that they can put on the 3 superstars, and the Nets can't guard anyone. So it'd be a really interesting matchup. At this stage, we should say the Nets struggle to guard some of the elite players in the league. So it'd be really interesting if we did get that as a playoff matchup. Utah, on an 8-game winning streak, gone from 4-4 to now 12-4. But still, I don't think any basketball fan in the right mind would say, yeah, I could see them beating the Lakers or the Clippers in the conference finals. You know, there's just that one to me, that one wing scorer missing for the Utah Jazz. That would be the type of player that would maybe tip them over the edge. But as currently constructed, I think, Philadelphia are probably going to sustain their hot start.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I think the Western Conference is just so much tougher than the East, and that's going to be the real challenge, I think, for Utah. I did want to ask you guys. You guys talked a lot about European football, or soccer as we call it in America. If there was one thing about European football that you guys could bring to the NBA, what would it be? One rule. It could be relegation. It could be no salary cap, no draft.
I was more inclined in what the NBA could bring to the European game. For me personally, like, I think the concept of all-star is absolutely brilliant. I feel like if there was an all-star soccer team where you get the best of all the European team, the best European players in one game together, compete against each other, I think that's pretty amazing. The Players Association, where a player is in charge of the of a group of players who makes decisions on behalf of the players, I think that's a brilliant thing that their football could look at doing.
The salary cap is probably the best thing that could happen to European sports, because there is such a disparity between the top levels and the rest of the football as a whole, that a team can be promoted into the top division and they'll never have a chance of winning it because they can't afford to get anywhere close to the salary that the big teams can offer. Right. Salary cap is an equalizer for all of that. I think that's probably the one thing that football as a whole needs. But it would, I can't see it ever happening, to be honest, but it'd be brilliant. Yeah, I reckon there probably is more that you could apply to in basketball, really.
Yeah.
I personally think there's a lot of things that we could take from them.
Yeah, I've got one that maybe would be cool to see in the NBA. And I know they've kind of been talking about doing it, some kind of like other tournament, a mid-season tournament. Obviously, they've done the play-in tournament now, which was very successful in the bubble. That's sort of an interesting wrinkle. That's kind of, in a way, copying sort of the football playoffs in like the football league. It's a similar kind of idea. But I just think it'd be difficult. The difficulty in the NBA is, who cares about winning the David Stern Cup or whatever it's called? You're going to want to win the NBA championship.
Explain to Americans who don't follow soccer why, like, what's the big deal about the FA Cup, for British fans? Why would NBA fans want to care about that?
It's really difficult. And sorry, Vincent, I know you're the football diehard amongst us, but I'm going to jump in on this one. The difficulty you've got is that the prestige that comes with winning the FA Cup, it's almost entirely historical. Like, if you were to introduce a new cup now, it wouldn't mean anything. But the FA Cup is like, it's historic. It's such a prestigious award because of the history behind it. I don't think you can replicate that by just introducing a new competition. It wouldn't have anywhere near the kind of esteem that the FA Cup does. Vinny, I don't know what you were going to say.
I think what with soccer, what's more important for it is winning trophies. Like, you want to go out and say like, we've won a trophy. Like, you can say like, we won at least something. We won a trophy. So with soccer, we have it's called the League Cup. You got the FA Cup, and then the title, and then you got the Champions League. Those are like 4 trophies you could win potentially as a team. What NBA could maybe, I think we've touched on it before in the pod, Jared said it before, about having a little thing. But if they were to make it a selling point where it could, let's say if you win this, you get a couple of picks. You could have a couple of picks potentially. Or if you win that cup, it would make these players more excited to win it. Because you know how they've made the All-Star game more exciting now. Like, it's become more competitive now, the All-Star, because a couple of years, it started not being as fun anymore. The players weren't taking it serious anymore, but now it's become competitive again. You got your team LeBron, your team Giannis, and it's become like they want to win that the game. It's become more of that. So with soccer, what's exciting for us winning the FA Cup as a team, yes, you want to win the league, but the lower teams, they'll go for that more because they know they've got an opportunity maybe to win that. They know they might not have the chance to win the league. So like NBA, some teams like the Kings, no offense to any Kings fans out there, but they know they've got no chance of winning the chip. But if they know that they could win a cup, this cup could get them a couple of picks, or potentially like something nice for them for their fans to have a little tour. It's a massive selling point, and that's what the FA Cup can give to lower side teams. But even the big teams still want to win it as well. Even the big teams still want to win the FA Cup. But the lower side teams, they will put all their eggs in baskets to get that tournament, so then their fans can go out and have a nice parade outside. Obviously, before lockdown and COVID, everyone, you'd get thousands. Even the local team where we live, it's like a little local team winning the trophy is a big deal when the streets will be covered. So that's the selling point. And maybe the NBA could look at maybe saying, look, let's bring on a tournament mid-season for players to compete for it, but they have to make sure the big players like the LeBrons, the ADs, the Giannis's get excited to win that tournament as well.
And I think just further to what Theo was saying about the history of the FA Cup, it's not just necessarily winning it. The third round of the FA Cup takes place every January, and there's been, throughout football history, there's been some incredible upsets in that round, like the champions of England, the best team in England, getting beat by a part-time team almost. And it's similar to, I guess, in a way, maybe March Madness, like a lower seed having an incredible run through the tournament and getting all the way to the Elite Eight or the Final Four or whatever. there's been some incredible moments, and them games where there is that big upset generates so much income for the part-time teams, for the semi-professional teams. I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure if this is still the case, but I'm pretty sure anyone can enter the FA Cup. If you've got a football team, you can enter the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, as a part-time team, you're going to have to go through so many preliminary rounds that it's unlikely you're ever going to beat Chelsea in the third round or Manchester City or whatever. But it's just that moment of the third round is like a real... Everyone looks forward to that if you're a football fan in the UK, as a potential upsets could be on the cards.
And
we all know that what's it called? Silver, he listens to New Generation Media, so we know that he's going to be on this completely, and he's going to be thinking about this. Hi there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's funny, in terms of like that in-season tournament, you know, I'll say this: I thought the Orlando bubble was going to be way more of a disaster than it was. It was actually great. I just figured there'd be a lot more COVID cases. I was worried that we'd have stars possibly, you know, not playing in big playoff games, and thankfully we didn't get that. I think we ended up getting a very legitimate playoffs and champion. But before that, when it was very uncertain what it was going to be, my suggestion was I thought that they should do away with like the NBA playoffs and have whatever the championship would be for the bubble be the inaugural David Stern tournament, and then bring that into like the regular season for like successive seasons. Obviously, I'm glad they didn't do that because we ended up getting a really great playoffs and a great championship. But I feel like if there was a way to do that, it may have to be something that's maybe first introduced in the postseason. Maybe you do it with the lottery teams, or maybe you do it with something like that. You know, and then once you kind of build that tradition that Theo was suggesting, maybe at that point then it could become something that's in season and people clamor for. One last thing I did want to talk about in terms of the UK NBA kind of like relationship is, you know, Adam Silver recently said that, you know, before when it came to expansion, he said that's not something they were thinking about. Now he's saying, well, I'm not saying we're not thinking about it. So it seems like he's more open to it. And of course, whenever we talk about expansion, like a team being in the UK is something that does get brought up. I think right now, you know, Seattle and Las Vegas seem to have more preference, but you know, NBA has talked for a long time about having a team in the UK. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it would work? And do you think that there are fans in the UK that would like really embrace having an NBA team?
Well, I'm just going to come straight in and say that myself and Theo were part of a basketball team in a league, the BBBs. We were absolutely lethal. If the NBA wants a representative from the northwest of England, we are ready. Sign us up. We could get all our guys in. Vinny could be the coach / part-time player, whatever he fancies. You know, it depends how he's recovering from his what's going down at the moment for him. Yeah, we're ready. Give us a shout. We're here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Like, I don't know how that would even work. I really don't even know how the logistics of it would work. Like, I am all about like trying to incorporate the league to England because I think it's a massive selling point. And I think it's a massive growing market for a lot of people. I personally think it's one of those situations where it'd be very, very hard for the logistics, but it'd be better if there was. They're doing it now already, where teams get to play in England and opportunities where and I think if that was more regularly, where a couple of games and throughout the season could be in England, it'd be a great idea. But I think the logistics of having a team here based in England but playing for the NBA might be very difficult because we've already got our own league in this country. It is a decent league. Obviously, they're doing their thing. Some players have come from the NBA to the English league, so we've got our own league, but it's just gonna be. I think the logistics of having an NBA team based here but play in the league as well might be a bit difficult. I don't know.
I think it'd be amazing, and from a practical standpoint, I mean, how long does it take to fly from, I don't know, like Philadelphia to LA? Like 5 hours, 6 hours, something like that.
I think about 4 or 5 hours. Yeah.
Okay, so you could fly from England to the East Coast that's like a 5-hour flight. So it's not logistically it's not impossible, but obviously if you go into the Western Conference would just foul everything up because then you start looking at like 11-12 hour flights they'd have to have really long lengthy road trips. To be honest, it would probably be the biggest issue would really probably be the home games, wouldn't it? Flying teams over you'd probably have to do it in series, 2 or 3 game series. Probably not, unless you fly a couple of teams over and then they play games while they're over here anyway, and then just do like a mini bubble thing. That could work. Oh, Adam Silver, hit me up. No, I'm here for it. I'm down for it. There's a lot of talent over here. Yeah, Jared mentioned it quite readily.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I've always kind of thought about how they would do it. I feel like you probably have to, I think that, the home stands would have to be very long, I think, for the UK team. I think they would have to probably go on pretty long road trips to make it work. I agree, definitely, you have to do, series. I think everybody in your division, I think when they come over, they should play their 2 games that they have to play, and that would be their only trip. I'm so against expansion because I just know that it kind of technically waters down the league, just from a historical standpoint. But I've always been intrigued about how they would do the UK thing. I'd want to see it done. Like, they talked about it with the NFL, we talked about the NBA. It's like, is it going to be very difficult? Yes, but like, it's just for the marvel of it. I want to see if they can make it work. They made Canada work. At least in one of the cities they tried, they made it work, and I want to see if they are able to do that for the UK.
I was going to say, EJ, before you asked the question about what would I've actually thought of something. Sorry, as you were saying that, I've thought about something. What would I bring maybe to the NBA?
Yeah.
I think what the English League football has is a thing called relegation.
Yes.
So a team who, if they're not underperforming, they get relegated from the division. They become the second.
Theo knows all about that one, don't you think?
Theo's home team as well. They've been struggling for quite a long time.
Which team does Theo root for? I've heard about this team.
They're called the Bolton Wanderers.
Bolton Wanderers.
Yeah, that's.
Have you ever heard of him?
That's. Are they even in the EPL anymore? Or are
exactly.
They got relegated recently.
Exactly.
They got 3 times, mate. 3 times.
They've got relegated
in the 4th tier of English football.
So if there was an opportunity, I don't know, because I don't really get why they don't have it for the NBA, because maybe I don't know the logistics of it, but it's like you're miles bigger of a country than us. England is a little tiny country, so if every single town had their own team, I don't see why not they could have a massive league.
I mean, they have the G League. Yeah, they have the G League. They could have it where if you're it would prevent tanking. There'd be no more tanking.
That's what I mean.
And then the bottom team would go to the G League, and the G League champion would be brought into the NBA.
I guess
the problem is that the owners would never want that, because then
the owner, and that's the difference as well, because you guys
now your team's done.
Yeah, your owners, the owners of the NBA really take charge of everything. They make the decisions. Like Adam Silver may be the commissioner, but the owners are the ones who are in charge.
Yeah.
But in the sense of football, the owners are in charge of their team, but the FA is called the Football Association, or FIFA, the board. They're the ones who are in charge of these teams. Like, you are part of their organization, so you choose how you want. You may own your team, but you follow our rules. But maybe in NBA it's a bit different. The owners have their own they dictate what happens. Adam Silver is more like works for them.
Yeah, in many ways, I feel like the NBA is bigger than FIBA, whereas in the UK or European sports or European soccer, the individual leagues aren't necessarily bigger than FIFA, obviously. So that's I think that what kind of stops that.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
I think part of the problem with relegation as well, I think, would probably be the disparity between the standard of basketball in the G League and probably the NBA. I reckon even the Timberwolves would probably beat any team in the G League over it, probably in a 4-game series realistically, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So there'd be a little bit of work to do around that as well, I think.
Yeah, man. Well, it's been great having you guys. One last thing before I let you guys go is, obviously if you're on this channel, if you listen to this podcast, we not only do hoop stuff and sports stuff. We're very big on superheroes. We're really big on Star Wars. So I want to give each of you guys the floor on if one superhero or Star Wars movie that is personally fond of you guys and like a movie that you really like, and just like why, like what would be your favorite?
I'll go first because mine's probably the most controversial. I love all like sort of superhero films, love Star Wars. I'm not the most knowledgeable, but I enjoy the experience of watching them. So one of my favorite Star Wars films, probably my second or third favorite Star Wars film, is The Phantom Menace, which to a lot of people to say something like that is absolute heresy. The Phantom Menace. Jar Jar Binks.
Wow.
Exactly. I mean, you're probably going to kick me off the Skype call, and I don't blame you.
No,
but to explain,
okay.
I explained the reason why for that. That was the first ever Star Wars film I watched. That was the film I watched when I was growing up as a kid. So I just loved. I was enthralled by it as a little boy, kind of thing. So to me, to then go back to the originals where it was all. That was more boring to me
It's funny. It's funny. I host a Star Wars podcast with our other brother, Shamari, and he's a huge prequels fan. And it's the same reason. He's like the action is so much better in the prequels than it is in the original. So
yeah.
Funny that you mentioned.
So that's me. There you go.
What about you?
Me personally, I'm a massive. I love Marvel. I love DC. I love every kind of movie. But I'm proper into my DC at the moment. I feel like DC personally, for me, do better movies than Marvel. My two favorite movies are Man of Steel and also Aquaman. Aquaman, I was pleasantly surprised by Aquaman. Like I thought, all my days, another movie about a fish boy. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what I truly thought, like a fish man or whatever. For me, yeah, Aquaman was such a great movie. I used to watch the Justice League TV show when I was a kid, so just to see it actually come to life was just absolutely brilliant. And I thought it was a great movie, to one of the best movies I've seen in a long time, Aquaman. I even went to watch it again. A big disappointment for me, though, was the new Wonder Woman. That was a very disappointing movie for me.
Get us started on that.
Yeah.
I was like, Gal Gadot, I'm in love with that lady, but that movie was terrible. I'm sorry.
Just got a pulse, that'll do for you, won't it?
Honestly, it was a terrible movie in that context. But the first one was brilliant. Wonder Woman first one was good, but the second one terrible. But yeah, Aquaman all day long was a great movie, and Man of Steel.
I feel like Kendall, Shamari is really missing here because we got Zack Snyder love with Man of Steel. You got prequel love with
Shamari, you guys will love Shamari.
I can't wait for the director's cuts as well. I can't wait for the director's cut. Yeah. Zack Snyder's, honestly.
Yeah. What about you, Theo?
So I am a very big Marvel sort of fanboy. I stand hard for Marvel. Like, I think the Marvel universe is just perfect, isn't it? Like, I don't think there's been a genuinely bad film. There's been some that have not been great, but I'd struggle to pick a bad film out of it.
You like Civil War, Vince? Oh my God! We're gonna have that. We're gonna have that conversation.
I'm tell you everything you need to know about Vincent. I don't know.
I'm sorry, Civil War. I fell asleep watching Civil War. I'm sorry.
Oh my God! Yeah, we're gonna have to table that conversation for another time. But where you saying, Theo?
So, bearing in mind my absolute love for all things Marvel, like Spider-Man was always my favourite. I adored Spider-Man as a kid. We've had some really great iterations of the Spider-Man movie. Tom Holland is such a phenomenal, I think, Spider-Man from Peter Parker right through to Spidey. Really, really good. All that said, my all-time favourite superhero film is Dark Knight. It's got to be. Like, I think it was such a revolutionary film for what it did. I mean, it really brought so much attention back to the genre of superheroes. And it was just so different. Like, it really encapsulates what makes Batman so good. Like, the dark, gritty, like, he's not just a cheesy superhero. He's not like Iron Man, like a Marvel billionaire hero. He's like such a down-to-earth, like, you could almost imagine it happening in the gritty streets of I don't know, Detroit, something like that. Briarfield. Yeah, so The Dark Knight, it was just everything about it. I gush a little bit about The Dark Knight. And Heath Ledger was just probably one of the best performances in the 21st century. Like, so good. Top to bottom, Dark Knight just blows me away. Even now, even listening, like when I go back and watch it now, just that opening score, like when they do the bank job, just goosebumps. Oh yeah, TDK.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love The Dark Knight as well. I haven't actually recently asked myself, or nobody's asked me what's my favorite superhero movie, but for a long time it was The Dark Knight. I mean, I think Endgame and Infinity War certainly kind of muddy the waters for me a little bit in terms of what's my favorite, but yeah, that's just to me a masterpiece when it comes to
what made those movies great for me
filmmaking.
personally was Thanos. That's what
Vince,
made
you're not allowed to like Infinity War, and if you can't love me at my Civil War,
Listen, I'm just trying to say, like, Marvel got to a point. Look, we can talk about this forever, EJ Kendall. I don't know about these two. I love my movies, super movies. I watch them all the time. But with Marvel, for me, it got to a point where it became very tedious. It just became very tedious. Like, I'm hoping the next generation of Marvel movies look great. It's like I'm looking forward to the Eternals. That's one thing I'm proper looking forward to. It should be potentially a great one, that one. But it just got to a point where it became very tedious, and it's like, But Thanos, for me, was one of the best villains ever. I actually was rooting for Thanos. I was one of the few people rooting for Thanos. So
Thanos did nothing wrong.
Honestly, Thanos... He made sense. All he was doing was trying to correct the world. But yeah, I love Thanos anyway.
Oh wow!
Yeah, in some ways, it feels like we're living in a post Snap world. With all stuff
That's not the truth.
But Jared, Vince, Theo, I cannot thank you guys enough for coming on to the podcast.
I've just got one question for you two before we go. It's a big decision I've got to make, to be honest, with regard to my fantasy team, my fantasy basketball team.
Okay.
Jason Tatum's been stashed in an injury list spot for a couple of weeks now. He's back tonight, and I need to drop a guard. So who do I drop? Monty Morris, Darius Garland, or Cole Anthony?
I'm leaning
Morris.
You're leaning Morris.
I'm leaning Garland. I'm leaning Garland.
Yeah. See, this is the issue. Garland struggled since he's come back, but he's, the more solid sort of fantasy player.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough, man. I've got to make a decision in the next couple of hours. There's some trades that I'm going to be flinging out. Theo, Vinny, keep your eyes on your trading box. It's big stuff. It's big stuff. I need a win this week. I've lost like 3 in a row. So here we go. Thanks, boys. Thank you.
No doubt. Thank you guys so much for coming on the pod. We definitely got to do this again, and this is like the first of a kind of a home and home series. So if you guys check out the Met the Criteria podcast, which I gotta say, one of the things that brought me to your podcast also was I love the name of the podcast.
That's Vinny.
That video and that like meme of Isaiah Thomas, especially someone with a complicated relationship with Isaiah Thomas being a Knicks fan, is just like one of my favorite things on the internet. So like when I saw the name of the podcast, I was like, oh my god, this is the best name for a basketball podcast.
And then the intro is incredible.
Yeah. It's like
intro with the meme. It's incredible.
It works so perfect. So make sure you guys check out their pod again. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Play, pretty much everywhere you guys can find them. Again, Met the Criteria podcast. We'll be on there soon to do our second half of the home and home, so that'll be really exciting. But thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you guys so much for checking us out on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you follow us at our podcast as well, New Generation Podcast Network. You find that on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And yeah, that's going to be it now. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. For Kendall, for all the guys on the Met the Criteria podcast, I'm EJ. Take it easy, y'all. Peace.